This happened about 5 years ago. It was the beginning of summer 2010. I went up to Massachusetts to stay with my grandparents for the summer, as I did every year. By the time I was out of the airport and in my bed upstairs, it was 1:30 a.m. I was 10 at the time and thought it was the coolest thing to be up so late. I tried to stay up all night, but ended up dozing off at around 3. Needless to say, I was utterly exhausted the next day. I just wanted to sleep all day. My grandma, of course, had already planned our long day of shopping for new clothes to wear at summer camp. We left bright and early that morning. We walked around the mall for a bit and decided to get some lunch. We ate one of the restaurants in the food court and quickly carried on with our shopping. I was an underweight kid, roughly 15 to 20 pounds under. Not that I was never fed, I was just never hungry. I was used to getting stares and comments about how thin I was constantly. It never really bothered me. As I left the food court, this middle-aged man with brown hair, a receding hairline, a stained brown shirt and old jeans that had the stench of beer and cigarettes was staring at me, constantly. I didn't know too much about pedophiles at the time, so I just assumed he was looking at how skinny I was. We reached another store around the end of the mall. The sign in the window said no food or drinks, and I still had my Dr. Pepper. I didn't want to throw it out, and since the mall was quite empty that day, I decided to sit on the bench and wait outside while my sister and grandma looked around the store. I sat on the bench as they went inside. Not even 3 minutes passed before I see the guy staring me down turn the corner. His eyes still locked onto me. I was too tired to move and practically falling asleep. Instead of going into the store, I just turned my head and kept my mouth shut. He slowly made his way next to me. I remained frozen. A big family was walking by taking their sweet time, so he went into the store. I took a massive breath of relief. I assumed my creative mind was just wandering and brushed it off as a coincidence. The exact second that family turned the corner, he busted through the door. His disgusting scent hit my nose immediately. I just knew it was him. My heart dropped. I could just feel his beady eyes resting on me. At that moment, I realized he wasn't shopping. I knew something was wrong. He was trying to abduct me. He walked in front of me and leaned on the pillar with his hand in his pocket. I kept my head down and held my gaze on his feet. I told myself that if he took one step closer, I would bolt into the store. He took a step closer. I didn't move. He eventually made his way beside me once more. I failed myself. I remained frozen. I couldn't even move my eyes, I was so scared. I don't even know if I was breathing. I felt his hand touch my hair. I sprung up, running to the pillar ahead of me, and kept my back to him. Big mistake, I know. Can you really blame a petrified 10-year-old girl not knowing what to do? He was right in front of the door, so I couldn't run in without running into him. It felt like forever, until anything happened. It was just silence. Then I heard him walk up right behind me. I saw his hand out of the corner of my eye, reaching to me. I couldn't even hear myself think. My heart was pounding so hard. I couldn't run into the parking lot either. It just seemed dumb. I was locked in place by my own fear. A split second before his greasy hand with yellowed fingernails reached my arm or mouth, a Chinese family of 5 walked out of the store. Hearing the ring of the door chime shook me out of the trance and I sprinted. I darted so fast to that family I was shocked they didn't even notice me. I didn't want to bother them, so I just walked close behind them until they turned the corner. I stayed right there until my grandma and sister came out 5 minutes later. He just glared at me from afar until I was out of sight. I told my sister, grandparents, and parents. Nothing ever came of it, though. It haunted me for a long time. The fact that a creepy old man wanted to grope me or thought I was such an easy target due to how small I was scared the shit out of me for months. It was enough to keep me up at night. I'm 16 now and a babysitter. I'm super protective of my baby brother and the kids I babysit. I developed social anxiety and isolated myself for a long while shortly after that incident. and whoever I'm with can never leave me alone in public or to draw attention to us. I'm slowly overcoming my fears, and I have some amazing friends, internet friends, and family helping. I still have his wrinkled, disgusting, terrifying face, his horrifying yellow-toothed smile, his salt and pepper beard and nasty scent burned into my mind. So, to the guy who reeked of cigarettes, beer, and tried to kidnap and God knows what, I hope you were caught for your fucked up actions and locked away to rot. So, this happened about 5 years ago while I was 9 months pregnant. I was Christmas shopping at the mall with my then 7 and 15-year-old daughters one Saturday night in a very safe city with a very low crime rate. There was an Applebee's connected to the mall, and we ended our shopping pretty late as the mall stores were starting to close. So, I took my kids to the connected Applebee's for a late dinner. We finished eating at about 10 p.m. and left through the Applebee's entrance into the practically deserted parking lot, with shopping bags in tow. As we got to the car, I was in the middle of maneuvering the shopping bags on my arms to find my keys, when a crusty-looking guy in his 50s started walking up from somewhere in the parking lot. He had shaggy gray-white hair, a faded flannel shirt, and old jeans. I noticed him briskly approaching when he was about 40 feet away, and he said, "This is a stick-up. Give me all your money." My blood ran cold, and I stared at him owlishly, shakily saying, "What?" He then said he was just kidding, and came up to stand right next to my daughters, who were on the other side of the car waiting for me to unlock the car to let them in. He started making small talk with me and my girls, asking things like if they were being good girls for Santa, how old they were, if we had finished our Christmas shopping, what kind of things we got, etc. He didn't seem drunk, high, slow, or mentally challenged at all. He was very coherent and seemed of sound mind. Mind you, I was a heavily pregnant woman, alone with my 2 daughters in a mostly deserted parking lot at 10 o'clock at night, being approached by a stranger who came and stood right next to my kids on the other side of the car, just shooting the breeze, talking to me and my kids with his hands in his pockets, and occasionally looking over his shoulder. I didn't want to aggravate him, so I was politely conversing with him, trying to look calm and nonchalant while frantically digging inside my giant purse for my car keys. This exchange went on for a couple of minutes, with him periodically looking over his shoulder. I was silently panicking, trying to politely keep the situation from escalating by calmly and nonchalantly talking to him, while also trying in vain to find my damned car keys to get us out of there. They were hiding good. I felt that at any moment he was going to pull a knife or gun or rob me, and my kids were right next to him, away from their mother on the other side of the car. And I couldn't find my car keys to get my kids into the safety of the car. He kept trying to engage them in conversation, and I could see that my oldest daughter was a little weirded out and kept glancing at me to gauge my reaction to this situation. Kids often don't recognize potential danger when they are with their parents, since they see us as their protectors. Because he was only talking and acting friendly, and I was doing my best to stay calm, they were oblivious to the alarming situation we all were in. Being 9 months pregnant, I was no match for this full-grown man, especially if he was hiding a weapon. While still desperately digging for my keys, I tried to politely hint that the conversation was over by saying things like, "It was nice chatting with you, but I gotta get these kids to bed," and "It was nice meeting you," telling my girls to say that it was nice meeting him too. My polite attempts to get this guy to leave weren't working because he kept sidestepping my hints, asking them about their favorite school subjects and how nice young ladies they were, while I struggled with the shopping bags and dug in my giant cluttered purse for my car keys. My outgoing 7-year-old was completely oblivious to how not okay this situation was, because he was being friendly, and because of the whole "I'm with mommy so I'm safe" child mentality. She started to talk about what she picked out for daddy for Christmas, and started enthusiastically talking about kid stuff, asking him if he knew what Minecraft was, etc. keeping this creep engaged in conversation. They didn't realize that I was becoming desperate to get them the hell out of there. Then I suddenly felt a sinking feeling of dread, realizing that I might have lost my keys in the mall, and that we were stuck outside with this strange man who kept looking over his shoulders and was showing no signs of leaving. I thought he was waiting for the perfect moment to pounce. All he had to do was grab one of my girls and threaten their life, knowing it would make me do whatever he wanted as long as he wouldn't hurt them. My adrenaline started to spike, my heart and stomach doing flip-flops, feeling like shit was going to go down at any moment. Realizing there were no other people or witnesses around, and that we were alone with him, the odds were stacked against us, and he had his chance. Then, he all of a sudden was all like, "Okay, it was nice talking with you. See you later," and walked off in the same direction as to which he came. It wasn't until then I found my car keys and unlocked the car and told my kids to get in fast, and I got in too, and locked the doors and started the car and drove the hell out of there. My 15-year-old lightheartedly and jokingly said, "Okay, that was weird," and laughed. I was overwhelmed with relief, and then I was confused over what just happened. I thought to myself, why the hell would a guy of seemingly sound mind think it totally acceptable to go out of his way just to approach a woman and her kids in a deserted parking lot late at night just to chit-chat? But being that nothing bad happened, I brushed it off and joked about it too. When we got home, my husband greeted us and asked us how shopping went, and I said it went well, and my 15-year-old told him what happened in the parking lot and how weird it was, and was kind of joking about it. I started joking too, saying how I was mentally having a panic attack while trying to look calm, and I started making fun of myself by telling my husband how I was attempting to inconspicuously rummage through my purse to find my car keys. My husband went completely white, and I acknowledged his horrified look of alarm, and I assured him that, albeit creepy, the guy was just talking and eventually left on his own. Now, my father-in-law is a retired sheriff deputy, and my husband went through police academy training after graduating high school, and being that the knowledge he gained from that, plus growing up with a cop for a dad, I found out why my husband looked absolutely horrified when I told him the details. What my husband told me completely rattled me to the bone. My husband told me that he was 100% sure that the reason why that guy was hanging around us and chit-chatting was because he was waiting for me to unlock my car. And the reason why he was standing next to our kids was because once I unlocked the car and the kids started to get inside, he was most likely going to force himself into the car with the kids and hold a knife or gun to them to gain leverage on me to force me to cooperate, knowing that I wouldn't abandon my kids, which would force me to get into the car with them and do whatever he wanted me to do, which most likely would be to drive to a remote location to do God knows what. And being that he wasn't wearing a mask, suggests that his intentions were to also leave no witnesses to identify him. I then remembered that he was positioned by the backseat passenger door where my 7-year-old was standing by waiting to get in. My husband then told me that the most likely reason why the guy ended up leaving was because it took so long for me to find my keys, and the longer it took, the more anxious and spooked it made him. And that whole time, I was desperate to find my car keys, which through some sort of divine intervention stayed hidden in my purse, thus saving us from potentially being abducted. I lived and worked in Saudi Arabia for a few years back in the mid-90s. I had some crazy experiences there, but this one was the most frightening. I was in a supermarket buying groceries when a man started following me around. I ignored him as he tried to talk to me, kept calling me Helween Habibi, sweet baby, and kept asking if I was Lebanese. There was something menacing about how he was looking at me. Then, he got on his phone, talking very intently, all the while watching me and following me around. This was a big Walmart-sized store, so he was definitely making an effort. This went on for about 20 minutes. I was very nervous at this point and checked out with my items, then started to leave. Just outside the door, into the corridor of smaller stores, very common in Saudi supermarkets, there was a group of between 10 and 15 angry-looking men who all crowded around me and started talking to me in Arabic. I played dumb, kept my eyes down, and mumbled about my husband, hoping they would think I was not a lone woman and let me go. People were walking past and working hard not to look at this threatening group surrounding a woman. Just then, my amazing driver, a tiny little guy about 5 feet 2, bowled through the group, grabbed my arm, and started yelling at me angrily. He threatened to call the Mutawa, religious police. The men fell back, looking ashamed and confused. Abdul dragged me out of there, talking loudly about how stupid and useless I was. I just went with him, kept my head down, and tried not to drop my groceries from nerves. We got in the car, and he turned around from the driver's seat to look at me, letting out a big breath. He looked terrified. He said he was so frightened for me. He had seen men gathering in the car park and knew something bad was going down. Then he suddenly thought, "Oh no, it's WG," and ran in. He said they had been talking about taking me, thinking I was Lebanese. There was very bad blood with Lebanon at that time. I'm ethnically Roman. I pass as white in Western countries, but pass for Middle Eastern in the East. Apparently, I have a Lebanese nose. He told me there had been some kidnappings in the last month, with the victims found burned alive in tires outside of the city. Abdul was a straight shooter, but he had gone whiter than me as he told me all this, genuinely shaking and afraid, so I don't think he was exaggerating. After that, whenever I was sent out on errands, he always came in with me and pretended to be my husband. This was a huge risk to us both. If the Mutawa had caught us, they would have imprisoned us. He would have gotten it way worse than me too. He was an amazing person to stick his neck out like that for an asshole like me. I'm a 16-year-old female, and I recently asked my mom about this since I don't remember all the details. When I was 3 years old, I lived in Ohio and was what we call the happy child. I rarely cried, always smiled, loved to talk to people, etc. I also looked really adorable. Short red hair, green eyes, and I loved wearing a yellow polka dot dress with Minnie Mouse pins. I also had a really high-pitched, squeaky voice. I wouldn't say it was annoying, but you could definitely tell if I was talking and what I had to say. That's really important to keep in mind. It was sometime in the summer. My dad worked at a DVD company before the days of Netflix, so it was just mommy and me time. On this particular day, my mom took me to the mall to shop around since she was expecting a baby boy. And me, being the happy little kid I was, came with her to help, which was just running around stores, looking at toys, and doing stuff kids do. When we got to the Gap, I was really bored and was starting to get cranky. But my mom said if I was good, I would get to go to Build-A-Bear, and to a 3-year-old, that place is like heaven. So I decided to sit at the front of the store and pretend to be a mannequin. My mom was cool with it since she wasn't that far away, and people walking by smiled and waved at me. That is, until I saw a creepy guy. The way this certain mall was set up, there were benches in front of certain stores near small carts that sold random things and trash bins. This bench faced directly at the Gap, and usually moms would sit there with strollers and try to calm down their screaming kids. My mom told me that later since I couldn't remember anything other than the rest. But this guy, he just sat on the end of the bench and stared directly at me, looking me over. This dude was the most disgusting man I have ever seen in my life. Long, greasy, unkempt black hair, a dark green torn and stained shirt, ripped and dirty jeans, and a long, greasy beard. This dude was gross. But me, being the friendly 3-year-old I was, waved and smiled at him. He smiled the creepiest smile, and I can remember how yellow his teeth were as he waved at me. At this point, I didn't feel scared or threatened. I just thought a nice man smiled at me. I then climbed out from the mannequin area, I literally don't know what it's called, and was about to go to my mom when I heard him behind me. "Hey sweetie, what's your name?" I quickly turned around and saw this dude, now kneeling at my height, smiling at me. My name is along the lines of what I probably said. "Nice to meet you. How old are you?" he said, and me not seeing what was wrong with this, told him my age. "Wow, 3? That's really cool. Say, do you like candy?" Now that I'm older, I really facepalm at knowing that this dude was using the whole candy shtick and that I was actually falling for it. "Yeah, I like chocolate and gummy bears and lollipops." Again, I don't remember word for word what I said, but it was along these lines. "Oh really? Me too. Say, the candy store has tons of gummy bears. Why don't you come with me and pick out all the candy you want?" He then stood up and held his hand out for me, and innocent little me gladly took his hand and began to jump around excitedly. But as soon as my hand was in his, my heart sank, and my excitement immediately died. This dude began to drag me out by my hand until I heard the best thing that I could hear at that moment. "Hey fucker, get the hell away from my kid," my mom screamed. At this point, I think literally everyone's heads turned toward my mom. I have never seen my mom so pissed and ready to kill in my life. But at that moment, she went into mama bear mode. My mom told me that the man looked down at me, looked back at my mom, before letting my hand go and running the hell out of the store. My mom ran to me and pulled me into the tightest hug a very pregnant woman can give, and by then, security had come and started searching the whole mall. But by then, he was long gone,